What's up, everybody? Let's just give everyone a few minutes to come on in. Let the announcement go out here. We're going to get one of these pause, show coming soon screens next stream, I promise. Been too busy working on putting the streams together. Still got to work on the slides. Let's just give it a couple more minutes here. Let me make sure my output. All right, well, let's get started. So today, joined again by the Coinspiracy Nut from the Crypto Mountain for another episode of Mining Mondays. And on today's episode, we have a lot to talk about. And it seems to all fall in the same vein. We had multiple ASIC resistant hard forks on a couple different coins over the past week or so, and I thought that this was a topic worth talking about for two reasons. One, I think we are going to see this cat and mouse game evolve over time, and in my opinion, it's going to get really, really interesting because there's a lot of money on the line, and the person or people or group of people who can stay one step ahead are going to have a major fiscal advantage because mining's a big money business, and the divide between GPU and ASIC is much more complicated than, where do you plant your flag. And we're going to talk about why I think that's such an interesting conversation to have, and why I think it's way more complicated than ASIC resistant or not ASIC resistant. If you guys are just joining, welcome. Make sure if you have any questions, ask me in the chat. I'll be checking it throughout the stream. But the second reason I want to talk about these hard forks is because they offer profit opportunities for us miners. So with change comes uncertainty, and with uncertainty comes a risk premium. When things change with a coin's algorithm specifically, what's going to happen next is often just a plan at best. And we're going to see examples of that today. About how there was a plan and that plan didn't go as planned, and so they had to pivot. But as miners, as people with mining equipment, we can take advantage of these situations to our profit, right? So the first example I want to talk about today is Bytem, right? And so I actually didn't pull up a screen for Bytem itself. I just brought up the miner. So let me pull it up and let's talk a little bit about what Bytem is. So Bytem is it's another protocol coin that, for me, in my brief familiarity with it, has to do with internet infrastructure. So let me see if I can just pull this over here. Okay. Come on, there we go. So Bitem's a digital asset later. I think this coin was very popular in the Eastern countries. It's not available on a ton of exchanges for U.S. investors. But Bitem, or Bitom, their initial launch, when they went from ERC20 to their own blockchain, used a algorithm called Tensority, and the only thing that could mine it initially was this Antminer B3, right? And so they launched ASIC specific on this Bitmain B3 that only ran at 780 hertz. So 780 hertz is like not a large number. Now, obviously, if we like look at what to mine, hash rates change by algorithm, right? So 201 mega hashes is a different, it's a orders of magnitude larger than the 3,700 hashes you'll get on CryptoNight if you do something maybe on ETH hash or ET hash. So, but what I'm saying is that number is not hard to beat, but they had a monopoly on the mining because B3s was really the only way that you could mine this algorithm. And so purchasing 780 hertz of hash power at 360 watts was a profitable move, and people started to invest in this hardware, right? Then last week, or let's see actually when it came out, 9 days ago, Nebu Tech, and I think there was actually a Linux implementation of this before it was officially like on GitHub. Oh yeah, 9 days ago, and then two days later they launched a Windows specific. It's the way it looks. So I picked up on it about here a little after our last stream. So this Nebu Tech has created a GPU miner that is able to mine the Tensority algorithm. And when you're using it's NVIDIA only, you need the most recent versions of the drivers. I think it's 394. I could be, don't quote me on that. You need the most recent version of the NVIDIA drivers, and you get a pretty competitive hash rate by using this program. But the catch is they want 10%. That Nebu Tech pulls a 10% mining fee in order to be able to use their program. But since they have a monopoly for all intents and purposes, as far as I know, on GPU mining for this algorithm, it's still been really profitable to mine. So let's take a look at what we're talking about here, right? So, and I'm actually going to pull up a calculator so you guys can. So I only have one rig that is able to that has NVIDIA cards. So I've had that, and it's got 6 1070s, and so the 6 1070s has been pulling about 2K hash on this algorithm. There is a fluctuation, but it's been pulling about 2K hash, which for me has been coming out to about 14 to 16. It's been going down as more hash power hits the market, but I would say on average about 15 Bitem a day, which were selling at 65 cents since Bitcoin took a dump on us. I have been, there was a couple days where it was closer to $12, but I would say on average for the past few days, I've been grossing about $9.75 in revenue from that 6-card miner, which relative to current prices is pretty competitive when I'm only pulling on what to mine maybe $7.40 on the next most competitive. So 31% increase. And if you follow me on the Crypto Mountain mining Discord, I mentioned similar numbers. It was about 26% more profitable than even the Lyra 2 Rev nice hash mining that I was pulling off the NVIDIAs earlier this week, this spec mining play was definitely more powerful. I mean, more profitable. My only reason I took my miners off it is because there's a limited number of pools, and I was using Ampool, and I hate Ampool. I get very inconsistent payouts in Ampool, which is annoying. It's not a ton of money, but it's something that frustrates me. When the pool doesn't pay out regularly, I'd say like 1 in 3, I just have really bad luck, will hang for days or weeks, and then eventually it'll come through. Sometimes I have to send a support ticket, and that's really frustrating. And then the other option is F2 pool, but they have a minimum payout of 50 Bytum, which is fairly significant for a 6-card rig. But it's worth pointing out that, one, I think this is a great spec mining play right now if you have NVIDIA rigs. Even with the 10% fee, eventually we're going to hit an equilibrium where enough hash power is going to move to this miner, and the 10% fee is going to kind of take out any profit margin over other algorithms that you could have. So we're going to hit that equilibrium sooner rather than later. But I thought that this was a very interesting reverse of ASIC resistance. You know, a lot of times what we hear is that GPU mineable coins get an ASIC specific miner, and it just crushes the hash rate, so they change the algorithm. But this is the opposite, where somebody went ASIC specific to have a control over the hash power on the coin, and some enterprising coder convinced a GPU that it could be an ASIC, because GPUs are in fact ASICs. An ASIC is an application-specific integrated circuit, and a GPU is an application-specific integrated circuit. It's just a very flexible one, and we're going to talk about what that means in the end. But somebody taught a GPU how to with a fair amount of efficiency imitate what this ASIC B3 was accomplishing, and was able to get really competitive hash power, right? So that's a profitable spec play, and an interesting move where, you know, they say in the gold rushes that you should sell shovels, and Nebutech here is selling shovels, and so good on him. He's hustling, but this is one of those days where I wish I was a better coder, because staying one step ahead of the market is really where you know, you can find a huge profit margin. So moving on to Lux, another coin I actually really like. Lux had a lot of hype in the last season, end of last year, but Lux version 5 Mercury update, hard fork, is coming out. Actually came out last night, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. So in this hard fork, Lux introduced the opportunity for smart contracts, introduced SegWit as a feature, also introduced this idea of block pruning. So this is to really manage blockchain bloat, which I think is a noble, although complicated, goal. And they're really trying to keep the blockchain size, you know, as low as possible, especially as it matures and they start to add in smart contract functionality, which can increase transaction size. But the reason that I bring it up today is that they are moving to a new hybrid proof of work, proof of stake algorithm that is, you guessed it, ASIC resistant. They claim that this algorithm is specifically to combat ASICs and FPGA devices, and as such, they claim that it's going to be more efficient, and it'll be higher profits for GPU miners. So I've been watching this closely because I saw that CC Miner was supporting this new algorithm, and I'm very comfortable with CC Miner. I'm not having to download some crazy unknown program from a Bitcoin talk page that I'm completely unfamiliar with and don't know how legit it is. So I like the fact that it can be done with CC Miner. And if this switch is going to happen, initially, the difficulty is going to have to settle, and there's not going to be a ton of hash power. These kind of transitions are usually met with a stark drop in hash power, and there's an opportunity to get in on a less competitive than average, block structure. So I've been watching for the release, and they announced it last night. So last night they came out with this announcement on their Discord. And if you want to know how you follow spec mining plays, it's number one is like jump in the Discord, jump in the Telegrams, and just like follow along, right? And so what they were encouraging people to do was to install their new wallet, and they were saying that they were taking a snapshot at block 299500 with the plan of rolling out the 300 on 300K. That was going to be the block for the hard fork. But as I have seen happen with other chains, the 300K block fork was successful, but the chain was stuck due to the incredibly out of proportion difficulty of the new chain that wasn't able to adapt to the amount of hash power because they couldn't get to the first block. Now, I'm simplifying what's happening here, and there's probably some like blockchain programmer watching this right now who's like, that's not exactly how it works. But for me, from a spec mining standpoint, I have seen that these variable difficulties put these coins in a situation where at fork the difficulty is too high for the current hash power, and that hash power cannot find a block. And since it can't find a block, the algorithm is not able to make the difficulty variable. And so finding that first block can be really, really difficult. So they are going to go back to the snapshot, and we're going to get another shot at this. So if you miss this opportunity, it may still be in play. So let me actually pull up the Lux Explorer and see what block we were at, because they stopped at 300,047. Lux. Here it is. Okay, let's see where we're at. Okay, we are still stopped at 347 as the current block, which is where they paused it, and they're going to be returning it. So this is how I'm going to play this. I'm going to get the new version of CC Miner installed on my miner. I'm going to attempt to have the most updated version of the wallet installed on my computer, even though the wallet doesn't have to be refreshed because I already have a Lux address, and so I can mine to my private address without actually having access to the wallet while the new wallet updates. As long as I'm still going to the same address, I think I should be okay. But what I am waiting for to turn on the miner is, one, an announcement in their Discord, but two, I want to see this block height reset to the snapshot, and then progress from this point. Once I see this blockchain progressing in a healthy manner, I might miss out on a couple blocks here, but that's when I'm going to turn over my hash power, and I cannot give a profitability prediction because I do not know exactly what the hash power that I'm going to be competing against is going to look like, but I do believe that there's going to be at least a short-term profit opportunity, if not a more significant one. So So yeah, this is Monday, June 11th at what time is it? What is GMT? Man, these times sounds. Yeah, so this looks like there's no proof of work blocks I see on either block explorer. So this might be another great spec mining play, taking advantage of the fact that we just had a hard fork, and that change can be a possible profit opportunity. However, the question has to be asked, is this a good thing? Lux probably was going to have to fork either way in order to implement some new features that weren't initially available on their blockchain. I'm not familiar enough with the project to know if that was a certainty, but I think it's a safe guess. But these coins that are going to have to play this cat and mouse game to beat the ASICs are going to have to go through these forks with a regularity that wouldn't otherwise be necessary. And these kind of hang-ups can and do happen when you have a hard fork, right? So by trying to be ASIC resistance, the chain has been shut down for 24 hours, and it's not the first chain I've seen even recently do that. And that brings me to our good old friend Electroneum. So Electroneum, I'm sorry for this Facebook login thing here, but I can't get rid of it because it won't go away unless I want to sign in, and I'm not signing into my Facebook when I'm on live stream. It's not happening. So Electroneum has a special place in my heart, and I'll tell you guys that story one day. But this is just this was one of these projects that, man, everything went wrong during their ICO. But they had a fervent community, and the price did some things that I was not expecting. And I lost a lot of money because of it. I made a lot of money off Electroneum, but I lost. The opportunity cost was very, very high for me on Electroneum. But looking at Electroneum as a mining opportunity, this was on May 30th. They forked to be ASIC resistant, essentially. And they forked at a similar place in the blockchain to Lux, right? But due to the high difficulty that from the fork, because there were ASICs on the network, it took a long time for the GPUs to find the next block. So much so that the chain shut down, and they basically said, we are going to incentivize block producers with some significantly more Electroneum thrown into the rewards pool. So basically, whatever pool got those 26 blocks, 307501 to 307527, whoever got those 26 blocks, they could send the public key to Electroneum, and they were going to credit some bonus tokens, and a significant amount of bonus tokens. Let's see. ETN company. So Electroneum is currently at 1.5 cents. So not a huge bonus, but not nothing. Stating that each block was going to be worth an additional $2,000 to $500 ish, more than that, $750. So this is another example of ASIC's resistance leading to the complete and total shutdown of a coin during a fork, which is just not good for the community. It becomes really stressful for the majority of users who are just not following the project closely enough to understand that this is what's happening. I mean, you have to be really technically inclined to understand why a hard fork should matter to you and why your coins are not moving even though you tried to send them. I understand basically from a technical standpoint what's happening, but if I'm not following a project very closely, I miss stuff like this, and then I send coins that get stuck. I get stressed that my transactions are out. The Discord and the Telegram, it all turns into bedlam. And this is just not good for the kind of community building that we need to do around these projects. So it really, begs me to ask the question, is the cat and mouse game even worth it? And what really started having me think about this article was this blog post written by some of the SIA designers. So I'm going to put this in the chat because I think that this is definitely worth everybody reading on their own time. So SIA, which is a coin that you can dual mine. They have ASIC mining. But the SIA team started an ASIC manufacturing company called Obelisk. And they wrote what I consider to be a very revealing, very honest piece on their experience starting Obelisk. And I think it gives some insight to what the future of this cat and mouse game really is. If you guys are just joining us, this is another stream hosted by the Crypto Mountain. We have a free Discord group where I, along with a couple dozen other contributors, talk about technical analysis. We do fundamental analysis overviews. We have weekly streams where we talk about mining, and we go through some charting. Every Wednesday we have a news show. So link is in the chat. If you aren't following our group, subscribe to the channel, subscribe so you get notified whenever we turn on, and come hang out in the group. I'm in there every day, happy to ask questions, and this last couple of weeks, we've been getting a couple mining converts, which makes me really happy. But let's go back to this article. So the first takeaway of this article is that really, what does it mean to be ASIC resistant? And so in order to understand what ASIC resistance means, we need to understand what an ASIC even is, right? And so when we talk about ASICs, application-specific integrated circuits, in terms of cryptocurrency, we take somebody who has designed a chipset that is able to, on chip, handle all of the workload for the hashing of a specific algorithm, right? Now, GPUs are application-specific integrated circuits that are designed to handle jobs from from the CPU. But this is really the difference, right? So when a GPU does an equihash computation, it has to go all the way out of the chip, bring it to the CPU, manipulate the data, and then send it all the way back to the chip. And so that takes time and it takes energy, and it makes the GPUs ultimately not efficient at doing the equihash computation. But in return, that GPU is able to do way more than equihash computations. That GPU can run my video games. It can let me do stuff on Photoshop. It can handle so many different types of jobs because it has a flexibility built into the chip. The price for that is efficiency. When we take an ASIC, we take out that flexibility. We say, how do we design a chip that can do one thing and one thing really well? But when we do that, it's going to be so efficient. It's going to be faster. It's going to use less power. And that's what we're seeing with the Bitcoin miners. The Bitcoin SHA-256 miners are so efficient, and they give you so much more power, so much more hash power per, energy unit, that they blow away any kind of GPU, and you just can't mine Bitcoin with a GPU. What's up, Blue? Welcome to the stream. So if you missed out the beginning, so far we've talked about Antminer's B3 coup, where the GPU miners took back the power from the ASICs by cracking their ASIC algorithm, making a GPU miner. And then we talked about Lux and Electronium, both who tried to hard fork to make their chains ASIC resistant, and in doing so shut down their chains temporarily because of difficulty adjustments going from ASIC powered difficulty levels down to GPU powered difficulty levels. It can be really, really difficult to find those first couple blocks. So right now we're talking about, does it makes, what is this cat and mouse game, and why does it even matter, and what's the future going to look like? So we got ASICs over here that are really good at doing this one thing, and we got GPUs that are less efficient but can do a whole lot of other things, right? We usually have this conversation as an and or nor. We have this 10x efficient but application specific to a T ASIC, or we have this, way less efficient but eminently flexible GPU, and we talk about these things as you're either one or the other. And the truth is that is not true. That all of this exists on a spectrum, and that GPUs in and of themselves are application specific chips that can't do anything we want them to do. They're just more flexible than an ASIC. So as these coins who start to do these algorithm changes start to do this dance, this cat and mouse game with ASIC manufacturers are starting to realize that, hey, we can we can design into our ASIC chips a level of flexibility that sacrifices some efficiency, but we will be able to beat these GPU mining algorithm games at their own game. And so that's really the big takeaway from the beginning of this article, right? That for any algorithm, no matter what algorithm you program, a hardware engineer can beat general purpose hardware, right? And this just makes sense, right? Something that is specifically built to do a thing is by and large going to be built better at, more efficient at that thing than something that people have built for general purposes. And my car, my Nissan, is good at a lot of different things. It's good at driving to work. It's good at getting kids in the back seat. It's good at carrying all my softball stuff. It's got air conditioning. It's got Bluetooth. It's flexible in what it allows me to do. But when I if I hop in one of those like Atom racers that are specifically built to be track cars, that car is going to be so much better on the track, but it's going to be much worse at driving to work. Maybe a couple times. That'd probably be pretty cool a couple times. But on a lot of days, I got nowhere to put my lunch, right? If it rains, if it's hot, if it's cold, it's going to suck. But what it does do is it drives really well around the track. But any engineer can look at a problem and say, if I build something specifically to solve this problem, it's going to be better than that thing that you're using that's really built to do a lot of different things. So hard fork resistance is only a temporary thing. It's only something we can do until ASIC designers sacrifice efficiency for specificity, right? And so that's really what this part of the article is talking about, right? So right now we're ones and tens, ASICs and GPUs, or the other way around. So what these ASIC designers are going to do is they're going to create ASIC miners that instead of being 10 times or as powerful, maybe they're only 3 or 4 or 5 times as powerful or efficient. But they're going to be 2 or 3 times as flexible. And so what this basically comes down to is, in order to fork your coin away from an ASIC, you're not going to have to just make tweaks like some current algorithms are making. You're going to have to change them on a fundamental level. And if you're going to change the fundamental algorithm that your entire project comes to consensus on, is it sustainable for you to do that on a regular basis just to try to beat the ASICs? And do we even want to? That's really my question here. I mean, I personally own a bunch of GPUs. I'd love to buy more. I personally like to buy GPUs more because it gives me flexibility in resale value. So right now, ASICs have this very interesting cycle where you have to, if you purchase in an initial batch, you have a massive profit window. I mean, like, look at this on these B3s. If you got this first week or so, and this might go further back, but this is as far as it's showing me here. If you're one of the first batches of the B3s, you are pulling $30 a day, and your ROI comes so fast on when you catch in this initial ASIC batch. And then you have way more of a profit window to ride out before your equipment essentially becomes unprofitable. And that's the hard part about ASICs, right? Once this B3 miner is unprofitable, and by unprofitable I mean the electricity to run it is worth less than the income that you get from the hash power, it literally becomes a worthless brick that will never be worth anything ever again, right? Because what it can do is no longer valuable to the network or to anyone else. GPUs, not so much, right? So even if GPUs become less profitable for mining, they're still valuable to gamers because they're still just as good at doing that. And so they maintain some resale value that has more flexibility and takes less, rigmarole. So, sorry, I can't. Alfaza is asking, do you know how to get first batches? Would you need to have connections to manufacturers like Bitmain? So connections is one way. A watchful eye is another way. Personally, I have had a lot of difficulty getting in on some of these initial batches. So I don't try to run that rat race, right? It feels very similar to me as the gas wars for some of these like really hot ICOs. You have to watch it with a hawk's eye. You have to be like sitting in front of the computer, or you got to know somebody in order to get lucky. So I personally don't have any ASICs for that reason, that it's difficult to find the first batches. A lot of the people who do get access to those first batches purchase all of the devices and then instantly resell them for a huge markup, which arguably might be the better business model from a profitability certainty standpoint, but I don't like it as a consumer of the who wants to buy these miners. But I will let you know that within the next month, I work with a guy that runs an ASIC mining hosting facility. He has a bunch of ASICs. He has other people who host their ASICs there, and he's going to talk specifically about how you manage and this getting into these release cycles, how you prepare for them, how you capitalize on them, and how you calculate whether or not it's worth it. And the truth is, if I was going to buy an ASIC, it would probably be through him. I'd probably throw him a little extra to let me know how and when. So my recommendation is, if you want to get into the ASIC game, get close personal with someone who's in the ASIC game. And one of the ways that you can do that is by going to meetups in your local community. That's where I met this guy that I'm going to bring on that runs the farm. Or drop in to the Crypto Mountain Discord. most of us are GPU miners. I think GPU is more accessible, especially in the home. If you have never been around an ASIC miner, they are loud and they're hot. Now, GPU miners are hot, but they're not very loud. Like I have, I don't know, 12, 15 cards in my basement, and they create a little heat, but they don't make any noise, right? If I was running a couple ASICs down there, I would 100% hear them in my house all the time. And that's something to consider. So I think GPUs are a little bit more accessible. So, hey, Andy7, welcome back. We did talk about LuxCoin. Basically, let me actually check on the Discord right now to see if anything has come up recently. So the last update was still at 1:52 p.m. today, which is this update. So Lux tried to hard fork. They successfully hard forked. But as we were talking about earlier, what happens is when you have a chain that has ASICs on it, the difficulty is really, really high. Then when you make that fork, the difficulty is going to adjust to the GPUs, but you have to find blocks before that difficulty can adjust. And a lot of times the hash rate from the GPUs is just not high enough to reliably find a block. And you can find the chain gets stuck on that block. And so what we saw on LuxCoin was that proof of work got stuck at the 300K, while proof of stake continued to 347. Then they shut it all down. So what they're going to be doing is they're going to be going back to the snapshot at 29,500. So I'm watching the Discord and I'm watching the chain till I see proof of work blocks start to get mined. And once I see that is happening, I'm going to load up CC Miner and I'm going to throw some hash power at it and then do a little calculation after, 6, 12 hours and see what the profitability looks like. But I do think that there's going to be a profitability window for LuxCoin. But right now, I wouldn't recommend trying to mine it because the chain is stuck and they haven't made another announcement. And frankly, I've been at work and getting ready for this stream. So I'll probably jump in this Discord afterwards, in the Lux Discord, to see what's happening. So basically, this is the future of ASICs. ASICs and GPUs are going to become closer and closer and closer. We are going to start... I think that it's going to be NVIDIA's Andy7 play on Lux. I think it's going to be NVIDIA. Let me check real quick. We were talking about this in the crypto mining, crypto mountain mining. Yeah, spec mining. I think it's kind of deep in the chat. I think NVIDIA's are going to be better on it, but as I get more information, I will be talking about it in the Crypto Mountain Discord. So if you're not in there, hop in, because I'm sure we got a couple people. I know Crypto Christopher Walken is going to take a stab at it, and there's a couple other people looking to possibly grab that opportunity. But I think it's going to be NVIDIA's. I think. Let me check one more place to see. So basically, we're gonna see. Yeah, there's just too much of a chat, but I did want to get this link so we can talk about this. So basically, we're gonna start to see the lines between GPUs and ASICs start to blur, because GPUs are gonna start to get more application specific for certain algorithms, as we can see for this. This is a new miner for AMD GPUs, where people are starting to optimize GPUs to be application specific and better at some of these. This is something that's currently in beta or even alpha right now, that people are having a huge increase in efficiency on Lyra 2, Rev 2 algorithm on their AMD GPUs specifically. So as people start to look into the architecture of these GPUs, which are ASICs, they're going to start to say, well, this one is better at this if we program it to do these things more efficiently. But we're also going to see ASICs do the opposite, where they're going to say, I'm going to keep some of the GPU flexibility and maybe not be 10 times as efficient, but I'll be 4 times as efficient or 5 times as efficient. But I'm going to be able to stay flexible enough that these subtle algorithm changes aren't going to be significant. You're going to have to do significant algorithm changes. And significant algorithm changes, as we've seen, create problems that in a lot of ways can be as bad or more significant than ASICs. We have the whole chain shutdown, which is not good for consumer confidence. It's not good for a product that's currently working. Like if we were going to be running a smart contract platform or whatever we're doing, having the chain shut down for 2 days on a planned update is, that's not a good look. And these are the kind of things that we want to avoid. So, if this is an inevitable thing, as miners, do we want to fight it, or do we want to understand that, ASICs have problems, but they may be unavoidable problems. So trying to run from the ASICs might not be the solution, but finding a way to democratize ASIC production and ASIC ownership might be, in the spirit of what crypto is trying to achieve, while doing what technology is telling us is going to happen anyway. Because right now, the truth is that ASICs are super centralized in their production, right? And it's no secret that Bitmain is one of the largest producers of ASICs. There have been other players stepping up into the space. But you got to ask yourself this question, right? If I could make a machine that could print money, why would I sell that machine in a way that would be profitable for someone else? Let me say that again, maybe in a slightly different way. So if I could build a machine that could print money, why would I give it to somebody for less money than they're going to earn with it? Which is essentially the value proposition that we're having when we talk about companies selling ASICs. Now, I'm not saying there's, business is complicated. And the truth is that, a bird in the hand is often better than 2 in the bush. And so if I can sell into open demand a profitable product and lock in instant profit, that is by and large a good business decision. And that's predominantly what's happening here. Predominantly, we're having companies build a piece of machinery just like the rest of our computers. They're selling it at a profit, and that profit margin is more than enough for them. But we are seeing signs that that isn't the whole truth. We started to see, before Monero's ASICs released, an increase in hash power, significant increase in hash power in Monero. And some sources that are saying that these ASICs were designed, being built, and being used since early 2017. And just using the B3 as an example, the sooner you get in on using an ASIC, the more profitable they are. Because when you have a machine that per energy unit is 10 times as efficient, you are going to just crush the profitability of everybody else in the space if you are the first one to get there. Now, the more ASICs you add onto a network, incrementally, your piece of the pie gets smaller. So the sooner, the less, the first ASIC is going to get the biggest share of the pie. And the more we get on there, the smaller and smaller sliver they're going to get. So what we saw is that possibly someone was developing a Monero ASIC and using that hash power to start to, be really, really profitable. And when they do this, they're using the technology to raise the hash power, to raise the money, to do this on more coins, right? So if I make a bunch of money mining Monero in a way that no one else can do as efficiently, and then I develop and sell those miners for massive profits to lots of individuals, I can now take my Monero mining profits and invest that in doing another ASIC that I'll be first to market on, and I can run the same thing. Now, does this mean that it's not profitable for the individual? Not necessarily, but it is definitely most profitable for the people that are in control of the hardware development and the hardware distribution, which currently is a very, very small group of people, right? So what I feel needs to happen is that we have to have decentralization of development and production of these more flexible ASICs, or else we face the centralization issue that is at the heart of people's gripes with ASICs, which is it promotes consolidation of hash power into the hands of those who have the money to build significant infrastructure, and the people that can produce it are incentivized to keep that information proprietary for as long as it is more profitable to do that than it is to sell it to us, right? And so because this is what it really comes down to. So this is kind of what they looked at, right? So using SIA's ASIC as an example, so they estimate that it costs Bitmain less than $10 million, which sounds like an astronomical sum to me, but that's nothing in development costs for the amount of demand that this hardware has. But the A3 for SIA took $10 million of development costs, right? Now, within 8 minutes of announcing the A3, they had $20 million in sales, right? So before they had to build or ship any of these, they had made $10 million of profit. So this is why the hard forks don't even beat the ASIC companies, right? Because as we see in Monero, they get to put the hash power on the network before a hard fork is even talked about. I mean, this is rumors as early as 2017, right? Since early 2017, they've been able to profit from their ASICs. Then by the time the ASICs get distributed in any kind of, distributed manner, decentralized manner to some kind of retail miner or even like small business miner, that's when we decide to hard fork these coins, which doesn't hurt Bitmain because Bitmain's already profited off mining with their hardware. And then they profited off selling the developed product to us, right? So in this case, they sold obsolete hardware in the Monero fork because they knew they were forking to cover their costs and turn a hearty profit, not counting the mining that we could believe. So this is the thing: the game is weighted in favor of the manufacturers. And so what I think we need to do is we need to watch. I think everybody who's a miner needs to read this article because it's long. I'm not going to go through the whole thing today. But it brings up a lot of important things that we need to be thinking about. Like, listen, my crypto nerd roots want nothing more than for me to have 150 GPUs on a wall in my basement with some sick fans with the lights that make it so that I can bring guests down there and just, when they're like, what's Bitcoin? I know I'm not mining Bitcoin, but I bring them down and I show them this wall of computers that's just like spitting out heat and has all these lights. That is like a nerd dream of mine. But my investor brain says GPUs are cheap right now. If you're waiting to get into a GPU miner, I think now might be, we were in the crypto mining, Crypto Mountain mining group. eBay had a 20% off coupon, new and used items last week, and we all just went ham. I mean, I had a couple open slots on my motherboards. I got some cheap 570s, 580s. I think that it's a good time to jump in right now. The market's capitulating. You're getting cards cheaper than you have before. You can wait for a good deal because if you have money and you have time, you have the leverage power in the negotiation. So I don't think it's a terrible idea to go buy a GPU miner. But I'm not personally going all in because I don't know what's going to happen with this ASIC space next. ASICs are going to become more flexible. I don't know what that means for GPUs. And it probably means that I'm going to have more opportunities to buy ASICs that are more similar to my GPUs in that they can mine the coins that I want them to mine, but they do it better than my GPUs. Because let's be real, I'm not using my GPUs, the 15 GPUs I have downstairs. I'm not using them to game. It wouldn't even be a good game computer. One runs Linux, right? Maybe it would be a sick game computer. I've never gamed on Linux. I'm using them to mine cryptocurrency. I don't have a problem buying hardware that can only mine cryptocurrency. But what I don't want to have to do is buy a loud, hot brick of metal that is going to be worthless in a very predictable period of time, and then I'm going to have to shuffle through the launch, release, profit cycle, launch, release, profit cycle, and try to do that dance over and over and over. Because I followed people on YouTube. I follow my friend, this guy I work with that runs this ASIC farm. That it's a hustle, and it's a profitable hustle. But between doing streams, mining, doing investment analysis, looking at charts, I can't go all in on that. But if there's these flexible ASICs that can mine a lot of different coins and might have resale value for the foreseeable future because of their flexibility, but they're more efficient than my GPUs, I want a piece of that. And I want some capital available for when I do it. Not to mention, I'll be real honest with everybody on the stream right now. Really, the only reason that I'm not putting more GPUs in my basement is because I have officially maxed out all of the breakers in my basement. And so I have to have an electrician come out and install another breaker or upgrade one of them, depending on whatever's cheaper or more efficient. If I want to put any more mining equipment down in my basement. So that's really the logistical thing that's keeping me from buying more GPUs because they are really cheap right now. But long term, I'm watching what's happening here because I understand why people are upset at ASICs, right? We even talk about Obelisk trying to, in their article, mentions that they tried to get this stuff manufactured in China and for all intents and purposes were blocked. Were blocked by, kind of the politics. Maybe it's not exactly political, but it's the back and forth between the players that matter in that space. Basically made it so that it was either impossible or very difficult for them to produce their chips in China. And so they had to find some other options. And so, listen, I understand why people are upset at ASICs. I understand the fear of what ASICs mean to, our decentralized ideals. However, the computing that's done to secure a proof of work network is difficult. And if we're going to do this difficult work, we should have efficient machines to do it. But what we want to have is flexibility and availability and ultimately competition, right? The lack of competition is really why we're seeing cartel-like behavior when it comes to mining. Now, the truth is that people with access to space, resources, and money and personal connections are going to have a significant amount of the hash power. I don't think that there is a world where that's not going to be the truth. That being said, we can have decentralized networks by democratizing the production and availability of these ASICs. And I think that within the next year, these companies like Obelisk, who have spent the last year doing, research, are going to start to come to market and start to compete. And we're seeing that with the Dragon Mints. We're seeing that with some of these other competitors who are starting to come to the space and take a different approach and possibly have more availability. Now, my one thing is the reseller market is still going to be a killer because, like I said, even if Bitmain is selling them at retail, people are picking them up as many as they can, and they're going right on eBay at 2-3 times the price, which I can't knock them for because, hey, that's capitalism, right? I've done similar, back in the day. I bought and sold collectibles, and I did, not same things, but very similar things. I realized that there was a supply opportunity. I bought up a significant amount of the supply, and then I resold them for a higher price, and people were willing to pay that price. So, an economist could argue that that was the correct price, that I bought them too cheaply. So that's a whole nother conversation we'll have on another stream. Listen, I really appreciate you guys checking us out. We keep up this mining conversation, not just on Mondays, but every day of the week in the mining and spec mining Discord group over in the Crypto Mountain. Link is in the chat. And we cover a lot in the group. You'll find me a lot in the fundamentals chat, fundamental stream, the mining chat. Recently, we've been doing a lot more research on masternodes and staking coins, which I had really taken a big interest in the middle of last year. And then when everything was just going to the moon, I felt like staking or masternodes was not a good use of my money. But with a neutral or bearish market, they're definitely interesting to look at. But there's a lot of them, and just like every other coin project, it's tough to know, so we talk about what's good, what's bad. And then we have a spec mining chat, which is where actually I picked up initially on the B3 Nebutech Bytum mining. So check us out in Discord. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So I think, I'm sorry, there's a light right in my eyes. Halfaza is saying XSN. And hold on. So XSN is XSN. I think is actually a great masternode to look at. The only thing I would say is that the best time to get it was like 2 weeks ago. Right now, I don't think that it's up to like a $50 million market cap, up from. Oh, let me actually just pull this on the screen so you guys can see it. So the StakeNet idea is the kind of stuff I want to see in a masternode project. So I think it's a great thing to pay attention to. And don't get me wrong, it might still be profitable from here, right? But right now we're looking at a $50 million market cap that just went on in 2 weeks. A pretty significant run. So it's up over 100% in less than a month. And so the reason I think that is significant is because I also think that currently, I think that currently XSN has a pretty high, ROI, which isn't necessarily a negative thing, but you have to think about the economics, right? So let me pull this up real quick. Give me 1 second. Yeah, because it's funny you said this, because this is one I was like looking at pretty hard. And the truth is, had it not been for the ultimate lack of liquidity and the fact that I purchased another masternode worth of coins on a flyer on CryptoBridge, and then it got stuck in their currently CryptoBridge is having a couple issues with the gateway, but it's a DEX, so my coins aren't gone. I'm not like freaking out. I'm just frustrated because my masternode should be running, but it's stuck. Oh, so XSM actually has a really low, I get some of these confused, not a low, a reasonable ROI. So, but they have a product that's in a use case for the coins that I think is more compelling than most masternodes. I am going to talk about staking and masternodes on Mining Monday. I know we're not technically mining; it might be minting Mondays. But what this Monday stream is supposed to be about is, how do we develop? I don't like the term passive income because it's not passive. I guess that's what people would call it, but mining is not 100% passive for me. It takes research, it takes study, it takes preparation, it takes work, it takes maintenance. And masternodes and staking is the same thing. You got to find a good project, you got to find a good entry. But if you could have, if we got in on XSN at the beginning of this month, down when it was around like 35 cents instead of 75 cents, that's much more attractive to me. I think, now I could be wrong. This thing could just like triple from here, right? Like you just never know in crypto. But I have seen, I'll give you this rule of thumb for myself. I've seen a lot of people talk about it on Twitter, and it's gone up 100% in less than a month. Personally, I wouldn't object. It's not out of the question that I buy a bag of this coin speculatively, but I'm probably not investing $11,000 into it, especially looking at the fact that, it has really good daily volume. 90 Bitcoin of daily volume is actually pretty good. So you could probably pick up a masternode. Let's see. Does this show the volume? No, it doesn't over time. But for me, I would be looking to get a retrace here before I would consider buying, investing $11,000 in a masternode, where I'm only looking at 43%, ROI. Although that's not a negative ROI because, high ROIs have to get bought by somebody. And so really, when I see 700%, that looks really juicy for my masternode. But the fact is that somebody has to buy 700% increase in my coins in the next year or whatever. And who are those people? People who want to buy more masternodes, or is there actually a compelling use case? But we could go into a whole podcast about that. A whole stream about that. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm glad to see some old faces. I'm glad to see some new faces. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Come hang out with us on Wednesday where we do our weekly stream rehash. It's your week in crypto. We're going to talk about some curated news and why it's important so you can stay up to date. And then hopefully Friday we're going to do something fun. Been kind of down in the dumps with the way the market is right now. So Friday, we're going to do something fun, hang out, and remember that we got into this because it's a hobby that I enjoy. And red candles suck, but that doesn't mean that I'm going anywhere, and it doesn't mean we can't have a good time. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Hope to see you on the Crypto Mountain. This is the Coinspiracy Nut. Follow me on Twitter at Coinspiracy Nut. And I'll talk to you next week.